Hi there! You're invited to listen to an exclusive excerpt from the next episode that I'll be publishing on Sunday. My next guest is absolutely fascinating, and this is just a teaser of what you can expect from our discussion. Enjoy listening, and I'll see you on Sunday for the full episode.
Welcome to Finscale, a podcast created by Solène Niederkorn, shedding light on innovation in finance, banking, and insurance.
Inspiration from within an extraordinary VC. Seema Amble, partner at a16z.
The reason that I've been, investing in fintech and financial services for over a decade now is because of a couple of things. One is I love the complexity. There's all these legacy actors involved, like banks and regulators, and then we interact with how painful it is to be doing payments or buying insurance as a consumer. And so you see this every day, and you see, especially when I was even sitting in private equity, you see how that there just has to be a better way to send payments, make it faster, buy insurance online, et cetera. And so I think fintech has always been really interesting. I think startups for me, and part of the reason I moved earlier stage and love doing early stage fintech, is the most fun part is working with founders and seeing companies get built and being there at really the ground floor is so magical.
In this episode, we look at the US and Europe through the lens of the fintech medium-term landscape and deep dive into what the European startup scene means to a giant US VC firm and what they look for when investing. Seema is partner at Andreessen Horowitz, the venture capital firm specializing in early-stage startups and established growth companies. Prior to this, Seema had been investing in fintechs for over a decade, primarily covering financial services with a focus on payments and insurance. It's very insightful to get Seema's fintech medium-term outlook and the importance of thinking about how much more this covers and how much more still needs to be built beyond the typical financial infrastructure. Seema has a keen eye on CFO stack and CFO tool, which give them intelligence with a real-time view of a company's financial data. Other areas to watch include AML, cyber insurance, and cross-border payments. At a16z, they want to find the most bold, ambitious entrepreneurs who are building the future through technology. And Seema shares with us the factory they have built to support the entrepreneurs. And this is, to be honest, a real source of inspiration. She also delves into companies a16z has been investing in, such as Paris-based cybersecurity insurtech Stoic, whom CEO I recently received on my French podcast, a London-based business payment company called Sequence, who have developed a B2B billing and collections solution, and a German-based startup, Rails, which is their first fintech investment in this region. You will see how the company aims to help companies manage payments and develop financial services. This podcast is for information purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment advice. Opinion expressed by Seema are solely her own and do not reflect the opinion of Andreessen Horowitz. Enjoy listening. Hi, everyone. Seema, thank you for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this.
So I'm really excited to dig into what you do at Andreessen Horowitz and see what it means to be VC in the US and what is your interest in tech companies. But before we dive in, it would be interesting for the audience that you quickly present yourself. You give us some background information on your career and what excites you the most with startups.
Sure. Yeah, let me walk you through a little bit of my journey to get here. So right now, I'm a partner at a16z. I focus on investing in early stage fintech companies globally. So that's generally pre-seed through B, and I've got companies in Europe, the US, and Latin America right now. I started my career sort of in fintech unknowingly. I fell into it when fintech wasn't really a category. And I sort of followed my nose through jobs that I thought were interesting. And it snowballed into becoming a fintech investor almost 15 years later. But, right out of college, I started working at Blackstone, the private equity firm, right during the global financial crisis, and ended up helping out in a lot of strategic investing for the firm. So looking at how Blackstone would invest in a Brazilian PE firm called Patria at the time. We divested a few of the business lines, et cetera. And I thought, oh, this is super interesting. And then the next job I had in private equity, they were like, oh, you've looked at financial services companies. Why don't you help us invest in payments and insurance? And then I did a few more deals in what was quote unquote fintech then, which was a legacy payment processing business. And then the third job I had, they said, again, I worked at an emerging markets fintech fund called Leapfrog in South Africa. And they said, hey, I saw that you've done insurance and payments businesses. Do you want to help us launch this life insurance business in Africa and then look at some new businesses in fintech? And so that's sort of, if you can see, there's this one job built on the last, and I built up this sort of background in fintech. And so that sort of led me here. And right before I joined Andreessen, I was at a fund within Goldman Sachs that was doing venture investing. I worked on fintech. I led the Series B in a company called Voila, which is a Latin American fintech company. And then I joined Andreessen Horowitz in 2019. And it's been a fun ride of investing in early stage fintech.
So we share the same passion.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you very much, Seema. What I found interesting to start with is to understand and that you share with us, what's your vision of fintech on medium term, let's say?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, there's so much to still be built in fintech. As one of my partners said, everything is fintech. But, let me break apart. What does that really mean? And to your point, what does that mean in the medium term? So I think there are a lot of businesses in fintech and a lot of businesses that apply fintech that you may not think about. So we think of fintech as anything that sort of taps into financial infrastructure. And so that's not just neobanks or payment companies, but it's also including compliance, which you obviously know a lot about as well, or vertical software. Mm-hmm. And then it also includes things like payments, et cetera. And so our view for the medium term for fintech is there are all these areas of fintech that still need to be built out. So things like compliance, more cross-border, there's interesting tailwinds behind it where we need to better track AML compliance and the regulation is increasing on that front. Or cross-border payments between places, whether it's between the UK, Europe, US, et cetera, there's still a lot of room for improvement there. And then things like healthcare payments. So there's all these areas of fintech that may not seem like fintech, obviously, but they very much are fintech.
Now that you've heard an excerpt from the upcoming episode on Sunday, make sure you stay tuned and connected so you don't miss a beat.